Hello, my fellow sleepy readers. Damien here. I'm going to give you some thoughts on some comics other than the Bat books that I read this week, because I much earlier this week gave you my thoughts on a few of I think 3 of the Bat related DC books I read this week. Actually, there was one other that had quite a bit of Batman in it that I purchased, which was Justice League 3001, Predator or Prey, and on the cover there we see the 2 Batmen. This, as most of you know, is a warped, jokey version of the Justice League 1,000 years in the future, roughly. And they are, in fact, some kind of weird clone that's overwritten onto their DNA is overwritten onto full-grown bodies that already exist. And we get all kinds of weird stuff with the now female Guy Gardner. I love the Howard Porter art in here, and I'm getting a little overwhelmed by how much goes on in these books, and kind of the sense that there's this balance between the jokiness and the other elements of the plot. And I feel like I'm not sure if they're ever really going to resolve the plot a whole lot. They're just going to it feels like they're just going to keep adding more and more characters from DC's past, our present, showing up in this future. Although they've also said that this book actually exists in the old 52. So we're dealing with the older versions of various superheroes like Kara, Supergirl, and the like. That's all very confusing anyway, because the people in the new 52 might eventually grow up to be people from the old 52, in a way, if you see what I mean. Anyway, that's all pointless jibber jabber. Basically, I'm still enjoying this, but I kind of wish it was a bit more focused. I wish they would make the effort to finish one plot and then move on to another, rather than just kind of adding on one after another. But given that, it's still very satisfying, very clever, and I really did enjoy the Batman that eventually appears, which looked really cool, and once we saw it side by side with our Batman, we saw how enormously huge this other Batman was, and that just was all worked out in a really cool way. And although it's a cheap gimmick to put Harley Quinn in yet another comic book, I have to say I'm kind of looking forward to see what twists and turns they can play on bringing in their futuristic version of Harley Quinn into the mix, which is basically the promise for next issue. So if you're a Harley Quinn fan and you have to get everything with Harley Quinn in it, next issue is definitely one to look for. What else? A lot of it centers around Earth, which is now a prison planet for the galaxy and goes under a different name. But they don't deal with the fact that it was a prison planet for a kind of evil empire run by the Five, and now the Five are gone. So are all the prisoners on that planet really prisoners, or are they political prisoners? I don't know. But that's maybe asking too much of the plot. Kind of shows you how I'm torn both ways, to just take it all as a joke or to take the plot seriously. There's some interesting sort of science fiction future world building stuff that had gone on in earlier issues, but I don't know now whether to have taken that seriously at all. Okay, so kind of fitting in the sort of half science fiction, half fantasy book, The Spire, feels like it's really clicking here in issue 4. I feel like the various elements are coming together really nicely. The characters who've been thrown at us, like the woman detective, chief of police, her young female lover, even this weird flying creature, are all coming into sharper focus, both as characters and as pieces of a larger plot. And this is a limited series. I thought it was limited to a 6-issue series, but now I am told on Twitter that it's a 8-issue series. But either way, I have confidence now from this issue that it can come together as a graphic novel, as a whole story with a beginning, middle, and end, because it definitely feels like now we're entering in, well, I would have thought this was the beginning of the third act, but we're entering into at least the middle of the story where everything is clicking over, and the art and the coloring are quite good. Maybe a little less tight than the very first issue where I was most impressed by the art. But anyway, very good stuff. Do they say anywhere here how many issues there are? I guess they don't. I don't know where I got the 6-issue idea. But definitely enjoying the Spire. If it keeps up like this, it'll be one to look for in its graphic novel collected form, I'd say. And then this issue of Rumble, which was clearly a Halloween issue, really also clicked for me. I've been enjoying Rumble more for the wild art, and the art was just as good, if not better, in this issue, even though it's kind of a smaller issue with less big fantasy images and such. But the team of the art team of the line artist and the colorist, Dave Stewart being the colorist, and James Herron being the line artist, just doing brilliant, beautiful job. I mean, you just look at any given panel, and there's, all kinds of just nice stuff going on in the color, in the backgrounds, in every detail. And the kind of stuff that has been built up about the various characters in the earlier issues that I didn't care about as much, suddenly I care about these characters a lot more, and they click for me. So I was really happy with this issue of the Spire, and I was thinking about, dropping this from my pull list, but it's definitely staying on. I don't think I would have dropped it anyway, because I just love the art so much. But yeah, very cool. One that didn't click at all for me was From Under Mountains, issue number 2. Continues to feel like it's playing with a bunch of fantasy cliches and not really having much to add to them other than telling the story in a slightly obtuse, obscure way, so that it takes a little bit longer to figure out which fantasy trope they're playing with in any given scene. I think they're trying to be a little bit Game of Thrones-ish with different people, but it's a little beyond them to handle that. And I love a lot of the art, but there are these scenes like here on this page. We're supposed to be seeing a gathering of royalty and whisperings about, who's on what side and what to think about which person. But there's no backgrounds. It looks like just maybe 10 people standing in the desert somewhere. So doesn't feel like there's some big thing at stake. So we've got that kind of stuff with the nobility and a hero, and then we've got a thief who we see move along a little bit, is discovering something, but we don't know what yet. I guess we'll find out next issue. And then some shadowy creatures, and then I guess a witch or a sorceress conjuring up something. This section is beautifully drawn. I really like the art and the color, except for the inability to create a sense of place where she's good at wilderness maybe, but not so good at civilization or what passes for civilization in this fantasy world. But this sequence here was very beautiful to look at. But that was it. It was just like a few sequences, and then it was over. And still no sense of a stronger, cohering story, except for just these cliched fantasy elements going on. So I don't know. I might still give it another issue, mostly because I enjoyed the art here, and I if there were a fantasy, a high fantasy comic book that comes together, I would enjoy that. I guess I've now read at least 2 others that were pretty good that were canceled. So we'll see how this one goes. It's only $2.99, which certainly helps me. This artist Sloan Leong. If this comic doesn't click, I hope she finds another good one to be part of, because I really like her art and color. Another one that didn't quite click for me, and this is kind of the big disappointment of the week, of my week's reading, is Art Ops, which is with art by Michael and Laura Allred, and the writer is not familiar to me. Where's the credits? I can't find the credits to tell you the name of the artist. Oh, there we go. Right in the middle of the comic. Sean Simon is the writer. And it seems like the biggest flaw in this is the writing. It's kind of a possibly interesting, fun story idea about art coming to life, kind of like Night in the Museum, but art is sentient and has a life, and there's this secret agency that kind of monitors and safekeeps the world of art. And for some reason, this guy gets his arm ripped off by shadow graffiti, and then they put it back together by adding in some kind of abstract art, and he happens to be the son of the woman who's the leader of the Op Art's secret agency. But the story is sloppily told, and it just frequently feels kind of random, even in just this one issue. And it feels like the writer does not have his eye on the prize. He throws out a few ideas, but so I will wait for this on trade, which is just as well. It's a more expensive book. I also, I feel like while I enjoy the art here, given that it's an art book, it's a comic book about art by this kind of cool pop art artist and his wife, who frequently does some very cool coloring. The art feels far less inventive here than it does by the same art team in The Silver Surfer, or the job they did on the FF before that, or some of the art that I've seen them do in Madman and the related Madman books, or say that Rocket 66 book that they did. It is kind of cool, here's Mona Lisa in the real world, and a guy's finally about to ask her on a date, and she gets whisked away by this random guy here. But it doesn't, I don't feel any confidence in the writing in anything, but I may probably try a first trade if it's not too expensive, and see if it comes together more. It feels, the Allreds are doing a perfectly fine job. I mean, it's not a badly done comic, but it doesn't feel quite up to their peak work, if you will. And I kind of hoped that taking this kind of look at art would inspire them more. Great cover, though. And then, I guess this is a little older. I feel like I'm kind of hooked on the Rook. This is his appearance in Dark Horse Presents a month ago. A nice little short story where the Rook, who's this time traveler, gets kind of involved in some events in the fall of Troy called Ilium, and some nice little twists where he rescues some people, and there's a question about whether he's changing history or making history into what it's supposed to be. So it was a nice little short piece. I did enjoy the Paul Galassi art. It's not quite the same as what I remember his art to be. It's a little bit more it somehow looks a little more satirical, if you will, like a little closer to Mort Drucker in Mad Magazine or something, but in kind of a cool way, and cool coloring and stuff. And I continued with that feeling about his art, although this was a really sloppy splash page in issue 1 of The Rook. It's written by Stephen Grant, who I remember the name from back in the day of the 80s and 90s comics. I don't ever remember being particularly excited by his writing, but I kind of enjoyed it here. There's a little bit of a sense of disjointedness, but it all came together by the end of this issue, and I really wanted to read the next issue where it's going to tie in with H.G. Wells and the Time Machine and this kind of by his own bootstraps kind of plot situation where the time traveler seems to give himself the time travel machine that he supposedly invented. So a lot of curious stuff. It also takes place on Halloween, and it ties in nicely with that. So yeah, I think I'll be adding this to my pull list. I'll probably grab the next issue without, and then unless that one really flops, add it to my pull list. Which I'm trying not to add too many of the $3.99 Dark Horse books onto my pull list, and rather wait for them in trade or digital. But this one is just such a fun romp for me that I think I will be doing it. And the next one comes out November 18th, so that's not too far away. And I have, if you saw my haul video a little while ago, I have the original appearance of the Rook in Eerie magazine, which I plan to read soon. So perhaps I'll tell you how that compares. Certainly the art in that one is totally different. The way the Rook looks is totally different. He looks kind of like a cowboy. Here he kind of looks like a cheap greaser. Like a guy who wants to be like the Fonz, maybe. And some other stuff I read from the aforementioned back issue haul included the one of these Kingdom one-shots from 1999 by Mark Waid and Frank Quitely. I don't know if Frank Quitely was such a star back then, but his art style seems pretty fully formed in this issue that focuses on Offspring, which I don't know why that's his name, but that's the name of the son of Plastic Man, whose powers, I don't know enough about him, if his powers are identical to Plastic Man's or just similar, but he's definitely like this goofy shape changer, and it's all about his relationship with his girlfriend and his attempt at having an identity of his own versus his relationship with his father. And it's kind of funny, and it plays weird with this sort of serious-looking art by Frank Quitely, but I thought Quitely pulled it off very well. There's one version of Plastic Man there. So I really got a big kick out of this issue. I don't fully understand the Kingdom, the whole situation of the Kingdom. I think this story takes place in the Kingdom Come world, although I'm not sure, because I think that the story of this kingdom was the combining of the world of the kingdom and the Earth Prime, or whatever you want to call it. Because in the only other one I've read so far, which is one where the old Superman from Kingdom Come meets the new Superman, or the young Superman from Earth Prime. I love this, where Offspring has the imprint of a car license plate, I think, on his face. Oops, tapping my screen that time did not bring it into focus. Anyway, this is a fun little thing. If you find it lying around inexpensively, I think it's a fun thing to pick up, particularly if you're a Frank Quitely fan, which I know a lot of people are. And maybe I seem to have all the one-shots, or a lot of the one-shots now from the Kingdom series, so I'll have to find the 2 issues that pull it all together. And I think it's somehow, maybe it relates to bringing the Justice Society of America into the continuity of the time in 1999. And then also another kind of old thing, a DC thing that I just missed the original event, 1 million, which is supposed to be the 1 millionth issue of a bunch of different DC comics. This is the 1 millionth issue of Supergirl. Has nothing to do with Kara Jor-El, just the idea of a Supergirl. But this one is essentially like a 3-year-old. They say she's a 6-year-old, but she's more like a 3-year-old. An engine of destruction that, out of her joyful curiosity, she tears everything apart. But since she's superpowered, she apparently destroys whole civilizations. But they kind of they kind of twist and turn it a few ways so that first she seems horrific and this awful cute girl, but by the end I felt happy to sympathize with her, and just take the story for the lark it was. And I read it out loud with my daughter, and that certainly helped me enjoy it. She's happy whenever there's a female superhero that she can understand the story and not be disturbed by the story in any way. So this was a kind of a fun one-joke story for her, and I appreciated it for what it was. I had brought no expectations to it. So, yeah, if you have a young kid, I think this would be a good comic to grab for them if it ever comes your way. And I kind of enjoyed the artwork. It's not in a style that I've seen before, even though I think is this from 2006 or something like that. So, yeah, I can't find a date on it. I'll figure that out later. Because, of course, it's supposedly published in November 85,271. Okay, that's most of the comics I read this week, and tomorrow I'll be picking up new comics. I still have old ones. I still have ones that I've been picking up for the last few weeks that I have not read. Some series that I'm now, multiple issues behind on, like Gotham Academy and Dark Horse Presents and the like. So we'll see and I'm kind of right now most itching to read more of the old 80s and 70s and even 90s issues that I picked up in my large back issue haul this past weekend. So we'll see how much of the new comics I get to. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.